Welcome back to Free My Mind. We have a lovely woman here today as our guest, Miss Bambi Lynn. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for for having me as a guest. And I also wanted to thank you that you actually read some of my blogs, and that really meant a lot to me that you did that. So, yes, my name is Bambi, and I am a mother of 6 adult children. I do have 13 grandchildren. One of them is in the arms of Jesus, and he passed away hours after he was born, and his name was Isaac. And I have a website called Healing Through Stories. And if you ever wanted to go on it, it's called healingthroughstories.com, and it's all one word. And it is where I continue to share stories of my life, because I believe that the more that we share our stories, just like I told you before we recorded, that the more that we become set free from our stories, and that our stories are only become lessons in our lives, and they don't become our trauma anymore. And I am a two-time published author working on my third book that should come out in June or July. The Journey of Josephine is one of my books, and The Treasures of My Heart. And they both can be found on my website or even on Amazon.
All of that sounds amazing. I love it when people are writing. I recently started writing myself this year per se, and I have enjoyed it. It has really been a journey for me. I never knew that I could. And I told you, I think last week, um, you really inspired me to, as far as journaling, I would normally journal, but I would love to turn those journal entries into blogs because I actually read one last night of yours. You
Which
have
one did you read?
you just posted it.
Okay, about the cookies, about making cookies with my grandmother.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. I said that it really inspires me that we can create our stories in this type of fashion. I truly didn't really know what blogging was, and I've seen so many different blogs, but I don't think I never really got the concept, I guess, of the
Mhm.
blogging because maybe I was coming across a lot of blogs that were tailored towards, I guess, like certain subjects and entertainment and things like that, but never what we go through.
Yes. And I think it is, it turns a journal into real life. And it turns your journal entry into something that will help other people. I wrote my story of my grandmother and the cookies that we made and the Christmas that we shared, because then it brings back memories for other people. It helps them to go back to their childhood. And sometimes there's things that need to be healed. Sometimes there's things that we just need to relax in and to be happy in. But other times there are topics that I write about that I have been through in my life that I did it so other people could be free enough to do their stories. And that's why I also wrote my book, The Journey of Josephine. And this is the cover of my book, The Journey of Josephine. And this is my memoir. And it starts off as this is my rag doll that my mother gave to me when I was a little girl. And she was my security blanket and took all of my pain and all of my secrets and everything. And we went on a journey to talk about it. And after I got my book and I read it for the first time, in my hand, I closed the book and I realized I wasn't that person anymore. But now I'm on the journey to find those women so that I could tell them to have the courage enough to share their stories. That it is bravery to share your story, but it's also freeing, because then it becomes the time that the trauma in your life, you're able then to leave the trauma at the door, but bring the lessons inside the door. But if we get so caught up, sometimes writing is so we don't get caught up in the trauma. I've been through a lot, but I don't always want to dwell on those things. I want to dwell on the lessons that I learned from those things. And a lot of times people also don't want to continue to hear your trauma. They don't want to continue to hear, because we are presenting it, because for a while, until we deal with our trauma, we tell our trauma in a way for people to feel sorry for us, for people to feel that pain, because we in our trauma, we've been broken. In our trauma, all the pieces of our lives have been thrown on the ground and we don't know what to do with that. But then there comes a point in our lives that you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and now you're ready to crawl yourself out of the trauma. You're finally able to finally say, I don't want to be in this pit anymore, and let me crawl out of it. And that's what comes with stories. And that's what comes with blogging too. It's because if you can blog and somebody can read your story, then it triggers something in their lives and say, okay, that's something I need to deal with. So that's why I love the fact that you just don't journal for yourself, but you journal for others, because there is somebody in your life that needs to hear your story. Because your story, I sell t-shirts now that says, my story, your first aid kit. Because if I can tell my story, it gives other people the bravery to tell their story, and it becomes a first aid kit. It becomes a kit that we can put inside of these kits and survival kits to be able to give to other people.
I love that. Even with you referencing that, it is there. Those are our lessons. I really love that because even for myself, going through so much, I couldn't tell my story correctly in the beginning, and like you said, it may seem like we're telling our story for some type of pity, but
Mm-hmm.
now that I have healed, I could tell my story to inspire and to really
Absolutely.
touch other people. And it is a big relief every time you tell the story, or edit the
Absolutely.
story. It feels amazing.
And it's okay. And I want your audience to know that it's okay to tell your story to get pity first. It's okay. It's okay to deal with that elephant in the room. It's okay to tell people, I've gone from sexual abuse to being sexually assaulted, to husbands with infidelity, to domestic violence, to suicide attempts. And it's okay to tell that story so people comfort you. But then after a while, that elephant in the room is, you don't want that elephant in the room anymore. Now you want to exchange that elephant. I don't want, because for a long time, being a victim of domestic violence, it is, I can talk about that, and that person, my abuser, becomes the elephant in the room. But once I start dealing with the issues and I start dealing why, I then become the elephant in the room of why did I pick that in the first place? Why did I feel that I deserved the crumbs on the ground and not sitting at the table? Why did I feel like I deserved that? So it starts to switch, and then it starts becoming like the peeling of an onion, is that we start peeling our own issues. Because yes, that person violated me. That person was mean to me. That person hurt me to the core. But then once I deal with that, and he no longer is the elephant in my room anymore, now I am. And now I got to deal with my crap. I got to deal with all those issues. And it's okay. So it's okay to go through the stages, because it's the stages that set you free.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Can you share a moment where you felt like giving up, and then what kept you going after that?
When I will share this, I will share my salvation story. Then when I was 16 years old, I had already gone through a whole lot of trauma. I came from a home that my dad, an alcoholic home, then a single parenting home, a grandfather that abused me, men that, abused me in the back seats of their cars, and I'm looking for love in all the wrong places, to being sexually assaulted by an uncle and having to go through foster care after that, things like that. When I was 16 years old, I had left my mother's home the day after my 16th birthday, because I thought, you know what, I'm not going to live this way anymore. And it started spiraling. And I moved in with a gentleman that was like 10 years older than me. And I was his night girlfriend. I wasn't even a girlfriend. I wasn't even somebody that he showed off. Dabbled in a lot of drugs and a lot of drug using and a lot of drug selling. And one day, on December 28th, 1986, I went down to the bridge in our town, and I looked down in the water, and I said, if I die today, nobody's going to notice that I'm alive, that I'm even existed. Nobody's going to try to find me. I felt like there was no purpose in my life. And I went to jump off at the bridge to end my life. And this was my third suicide attempt. And a police officer grabbed me off of the bridge, threw me into the backseat of his car, and I was sent to a psychiatric center for children. So I got there, they did some blood work, they did a physical, they did all the, the intake stuff that they needed to do. And the next day I went into the office and they asked me, did I know that I was pregnant? And I had no idea. And that day I asked them if I can go into my room because they told me that people like me don't have babies. So they're going to give me some other alternatives. And I said, can I go into my room and just sit and I just need some time. And when I was a little girl, I went to church on a church bus. So when I was a kid, there was a church bus every Sunday that came around our neighborhoods, to pick up the misfits, to take us to church, the ones that, because our parents didn't go to church. So they picked us up and we were in ministry. So I knew who Jesus was. I just didn't think that Jesus was for the misfits. I didn't think that he was here, to give me life because I wasn't a family within the church. So I know who God was. And so when I went into that room and they locked the door, behind me, I got on my face before God. And I said, if you are really real, and if you are a God that really loves people, I need you to save me and my baby, and I will honor you and bless you all the days of my life. I don't know what that means. I just need you to save my baby. And I believe that was my moment. That was my moment in my life. That was the defining moment that took me on this spiral and roller coaster ride of Christianity, of knowing who God is, even though man messes up, understanding God's love when I've never experienced man's love. I then understood grace in the arms of a loving God. So that was my defining moment on December 28th, 1986. And my darling daughter is 37 years old. And she was the domino effect, of allowing, God to take a broken girl and set her on the path. And I realize, and I tell women now, and I tell people now, is that to realize our lives are about chapters. And now that chapter of hopelessness, that chapter of trauma, that chapter of pain doesn't last forever. So don't give up in the midst of the middle of the chapter, because there's more to your life that's happening. And I am a living testament and a living proof that God can take a broken person and he can set her free. And in that, I have a 37-year-old daughter that had a domino effect that I'm a mother of 6, and if I would have ended my life that day, I would not have the life that I have today. I would not have these beautiful 13 grandchildren and these amazing kids that I have. And so I tell women all the time, hang on to the chapter, because that chapter is leaving and you're going to start a new chapter. Don't give up in the middle of your chapter.
Wow. And that's one of the best messages that I've heard, because a lot of times we do tend to give up, when things get tough. So those types of words of encouragement are, just what we all need to hear. I come across people every day, not just women, but men as well. They, life gets to them. And in that chapter of life, they're ready to, close that chapter, but not in the best way. So
yeah,
I think it's really,
and I tell women too, the other thing is that, when you are out there speaking to women, or you're out there speaking to men, I studied I studied the stages of a pearl. When an oyster is there is no pearl into that oyster until that oyster has gone through some stuff. That oyster has to have parasites, has to try to eat at it. The sand has to try to get inside of the oyster shell. The wind, the waves, the hurricane, all the distress of life has to happen for that oyster. And once that oyster, if you go and you pick up an oyster and you look open and you open up, there's a pearl in there, but there wasn't a pearl in the beginning. Because life happens and pearls come through distress. Beauty, when the Bible says that ashes turn into beauty, you don't get ashes until something has been burned up. You don't get ashes until something has fallen. You don't get ashes until something has been destroyed. And then it turns into beauty, because when you have ashes, when you think of a burning building or a burning house, and then the house turns down to ashes, that's when you can rebuild. That's when you can get things in that house again that you never had. That's when you can get that. You go, oh, you know what? I didn't have a nice bathtub the last time. I think I'm going to make sure I get a really big bathtub this time. This is where you can repick where the rooms are going to be, where things are going to be, because you're an architect now. But it couldn't happen until something fell like ashes. And in California, there's a flower that blooms after the fire. It doesn't bloom until the fire happens. So, there are times that the fires in our lives is because seeds are going to be planted. And if we could just realize that the seeds of our lives are continuing to be planted, but the most times that we see seeds planted are in the midst of the storms. Are inside when we are so stuck in this storm and so many things are happening in our lives. We have to realize that there are seeds that are being planted within those storms. And always know and always believe that a storm doesn't last forever. You're going to get to the other side. The night doesn't last forever because there's always a morning. There's always a new day. And that's what we need to look at. We can't still hang on all the time to the darkness and to the storms, because something else is coming. Something else is being created for us. And understand that when you're in the fire, there's somebody else in the fire with you. You're never alone. You're never forsaken. You're never alone. I heard a statement yesterday, and I've been struggling the last, couple weeks, because I know that God's doing something in my life and I don't know what. And I'm like in a hurry, to get to the platform of where he has me. And there was a scene in a movie, and there were two guys sitting down, and one guy looks at the other guy and he said, I just want you to know, I'm not ignoring you. I'm restoring you. I was like, wow, God. Okay, because sometimes we feel like, because we can't see God, so we think he's forgotten about us. We think he's ignoring us when he's not. He is restoring me and he's refining me, because he knows that my heart's desire is to use my platform to bring healing through stories. That's my desire. But God knows that I got to walk through some fire, and I got to walk through some stuff in order to meet you where you're at. In order for me to be able to minister to you and help you go on that path, I got to clean up some stuff in my life. So he's not ignoring us, he's restoring us. And that was like an eye opener to me. Like, wow, God, okay, I got this now.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned is, we really have to pay attention to what God is telling us, because a lot of us are so distracted and we're so into, whatever we're going through, we're missing all of the signs that he's given us. And that's one of the things that I truly learned this past year, is to really sit back, really pay attention, because those signs are coming at you in all kinds of ways. And
Absolutely.
it just amazes me that I've been able to be quiet for the most part in order to pay attention. So,
And
and
that's
I
hard for women.
everyone, we gotta pay attention. He may not be physically talking to us or all this stuff, but he's putting things in front of us for us to either see, for us to hear, or sometimes for us to feel, for us to understand. What he's trying to offer or trying to help, or when we're asking for help, or clarification, a lot of times we don't, notice that he's giving us answers.
Absolutely. And we all do that. And because we're in a hurry. And, because I look at my life, and I knew when I was 28 years old that God had given me a dream. He had given me a vision that I was walking on a stage, and in the audience, there were people that had a stench to them, and they looked homeless. Their clothes were all raggy, and they had words written across their chests that said unloved, dirty, unforgiven, and all these words of negativity that were written across their chest. And I began to start telling my testimony on how God had set me free and how he had given me the journey of healing. And I began to see the audience change, and the aroma in the room change, and people's clothing now were that of dignified clothing. They were clean, and they had new words written across. I'm forgiven. I'm the daughter of the king. I have been redeemed. And that was like when I was 28, 29 years old. And I have been hanging on to that dream and hanging on to that vision and saying, God, when are you going to use me? And this past year, I've been on 100 different podcasts this past year of sharing my story, of sharing how God has set me free. And I've written 2 books, never in my 50s, never thinking, oh my goodness, am I really going? And working on my 3rd book and being able to speak to audiences. I see God moving that forward. And I see that God is using us in every demographics, in every race, and he's joining our, no matter what the government says, no matter what the country says, no matter what, I see the unity coming together between cultures and between race. And because we're sharing our stories, I remember a couple months ago, I gave my book to a woman that she is Black. She lives in a poor section of town where we live. And I gave her my book and she read it in 2 days. And she called me and she said, you told my story that I was never allowed to tell. Because in my culture, you don't share the secrets in your home. And she said, and you spoke to my soul. And that's what we're doing, is that we're allowing all of us to meet at the table. Because when we meet at the table, you don't see the crippledness of us. When we meet at the table, you don't see the distress of what we've gone through. You don't see the burden, because we're all covered by the banqueting table. We're all covered by the tablecloth, and we're able to meet together and to be able to share our stories. We have the same story, just different cultures, but it's the same story. We've all been hurt. We've all been traumatized. We've all been victimized. And now it's time for us to come together and hold hands with each other and become a community, to become a tribe, instead of thinking that we're an island.
Yes, and that's where I've been. Just my thing is, I want our villages back. That's what I say. I want
Yes,
our villages back. That's my goal.
I
So
love that. Love that.
that's what I'm working towards, getting our villages back so that we can all be one instead of the many, I don't know what they would like to call it, but there's so many things or all of these, I'm this and I'm that. No, we are one.
Yeah,
We're
we're one.
we're
You
one.
cut me, you cut you. We all have the same blood. And
Yeah.
you know what? We all have the same blood that's going to save us and set us free. Because it's not our blood, it's the blood of Jesus that's going to set us free. It's his hem that we're all hanging on to. It's the hem of his garment. And once we realize that, build the table with everybody. Build the table and let's meet at the table. I may have black and white ways of looking at life, but God is gray. God says, hear their story. Instead of looking at somebody out on the street and say, oh my goodness, look at them. Now I look at people and say, I wonder what they've been through. I wonder what their story is. Because you didn't get there without having a story of trauma. You didn't get there without having a story of that you were victimized. You didn't get there without having some sadness and some brokenness in your life. We just never talked about it. And now we live in a culture today. I think that sometimes people share too much, but we do live in a culture today that we're allowed to share our stories now.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that my whole desire is that we can share our stories without medicating our stories. I
Absolutely.
want women to be set free without having to be medicated, because that just is Band-Aid. That's just putting a Band-Aid on the hurt and the pain. I want to be somebody that comes alongside you and says, let's do this and let's not medicate it. Let's get rid of it. Let's learn that your thing that you have gone through is no different than what I have gone through. The only difference is that I didn't stay there. And now I want to help you not to stay there either.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the most controversial opinion that you've had about the process of healing from trauma?
I think, for the most part, of course, when you start dealing with your trauma and you start dealing with the elephant in your family's room, your family, you have all different opinions and all different people that look at it. But
Mm.
I've learning this past year is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, and what you believe. There's always a villain in your life that hears your story, and there's a hero. So there are some people in my life that look at my life. I have 6 children.
Mm.
Prime example. I have 2 of my children that don't speak to me because they look at their lives and they see me as a villain. They see me as somebody that hurt them. Then I have children in my life that see me as the hero in their lives. And you have to accept that and be okay with that, because in our household, because there were 6 children, there are 6 different stories that are happening within inside of your household. There are 6 different perspectives of what's happening in your household. And I'm going to be 55 years old, and I'm finally okay with that I don't take offense to that anymore, because it hurt. And not saying that sometimes it does. I don't, that little thing doesn't, pull up its head again. But for the most part, that's their story. That's their story that they believe. And that's their story that they have to work through. And it's hard to be known as the black sheep in the family. It's hard to be known as the loud mouth, the person that wants to tell all the secrets within the household. How dare you do this? It's hard to be that person. But you know what? It's freeing also to be that person. It's letting go, and it's amazing to be that person. But just be okay of the character that you are in people's stories. Be okay with that.
Absolutely. That's you know really what I've gone through these past few years, and I'm a mom of five. My oldest, he will be 17, and I too dealt with a lot of trauma to where their lives had to change, several times because of the things that, as their mom, that I was going through. And with my oldest, finally being able to sit down and talk with him, because I'm just now healing, for the most part, for the past, I want to say about 4 years. I've been doing really, really well. Yes, I did have a talk with him, and a lot of things, his perspective did hurt, but now that I'm where I am in life, that is something that I've had to accept. The way that he sees life and the way he sees, everything. And like you said, there's times where it does get to me, and I feel sad about it sometimes when it comes across my mind. But I know that from this point on and every day forward, I'm going to continue to strive and do the best that I can. So no matter, what his outlook is, I'm always going to be there. I want to always do better. And I understand and I embrace, the way he feels. Because I too,
Yes.
had that type of conversation with my own mother as an adult though. And she, didn't take it well. So for me, I understand, and I have to, just
And you
go.
just have to build those boundaries. I have a mom that didn't take things very well either. And because they're thinking that, and me too in the beginning, when my children started telling, I did take offense to it, because as a mom, you're going, I did the best I could. I did what I thought that I was supposed to do. There's never a time that a mother holds her baby for the first time that she's saying, I can't wait to mess up your life. All we want to do is love our children, but we're loving our children and we're parenting our children from where we are in our lives. So when people say, I parented my children all the same way, no, you didn't, because each one of your children were in different stages of your healing. Each one of your children are in different stages of your brokenness. So we didn't parent them, all the same way. And I'm okay with that now. But that took a long time to be okay with that. It took a long time to be okay with my children's sarcastic jokes, because I would go away and I would cry and go, all I did was want to just love you and did everything I could. And now I'm okay. But I think that the generation before us, because they're looking at it as that we're attacking them. When I'm not attacking you, I'm just telling you how I looked at it. They don't like the words I'm sorry, because they thought they did, I did the best I could. I did the best I could. And they did. But can you tell me you're sorry? can you validate what I went through? Can you see my perspective? And sometimes they don't want to see that because they think you're attacking them. And we're the same way. We're just in a generation now that we can grow a little bit more, that there's a little more resources out there to tell us and to show us. But I'm really proud of you. Like, that's 4 years of, saying, I can't do this by myself. So help me to be picked up. That takes courage. That takes bravery. That takes determination. That takes audacity. That takes strength, and for you to be able to do that, I'm really proud of you. And then having a podcast to be able to share that story, that's pretty incredible. You know what? You deserve a superhero cape. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just really glad that I was able to I'm going to be honest and say I never thought through all these years, especially for the past 15 years, I guess since I've been a mom, I truly thought that I would never ever make it out of the life that I was in. I thought I would never heal. I thought I would never get better because I'm a person who understood that even as young as 10, I was dealing with depression and I never was able to get it fixed or turned around or get some kind of help. So I myself, I'm truly proud of how far I've come because I just never thought. I never, I've had plenty of times where I didn't want to, be here anymore, and so I'm just.
And there's times that I go to bed because I live alone. I live in a different state than what I grew up in. And, I transplanted myself. And there were days last year that I'd say, God, I don't want to die, but if you choose to take me tonight, I'm okay with that. I just don't want to go through this anymore. It wasn't that I had a sense that I wanted to kill myself. It was just like, when I lay my head down, Lord, if you like this today to be the last day of my life, I'm okay. Because life is hard. Life is not what we planned. It's metamorphosing all the time. And it's hard. It's peeling of the onion, and you're crying, I was thinking about this because I've seen Amish build quilts before. And they take squares. And so let's say that we take squares of our lives, the things that we have been through, the things that have broken us, but the things that have made us happy. We're sewing all the squares together. And what they do is then they put the whole blanket on this, it's like a quilt square. And what they're doing is that they start pulling the fabric to start binding the fabric. So it starts pulling it so they can bind it. And I think about that with our relationship with Christ and our relationship through life is that there is all these squares that have been knitted together in our lives. And God has come alongside and he has bound those squares. He has built the foundation around those squares. He has brought healing throughout those squares. And then that blanket that has been created is wrapped around us, and it's given us grace. It's given us mercy. And in some of the things that we have been through in our lives, we could have been judged. But instead of God judging us, he set us free and he gave us mercy and he gave us his kindness and he gave us his everlasting love. Some of the things that I did, I should have been stoned in the middle of the city. But God picked me up and he surrounded me and he loved me. And he bound my blanket with his love and his foundation.
I love that. I really do. I really love that. I got a question. If you could go back and change one thing about your healing journey, what would it be?
Well, that's a question that we ask, that I seem to be asked a lot. But the problem is with that question is that I wouldn't be who I am today if we changed anything. Years ago, I watched a movie called The Butterfly Effect. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a creepy movie in a way, but it would go back to, this person would say they wanted to go back and change this. But if you go back and change that, then all of everything else changes. The course changes. So, and it went all the way back to the point of if I wasn't born, in his mother's womb, and he wanted to go back. It was a profound movie. It was kind of creepy, but it was a profound movie called The Butterfly Effect. And if we change anything in our lives, then something else would have had to change.
Hmm.
Then something else would have had to happen. So I don't know. You know what? God fashioned me in my mother's womb, and he created me for such a time as this. And he put the destiny and purpose and plans in my life from the foundations of time. So if I was to change anything, I wouldn't be me. And I'm enjoying finally being me. So I would say nothing. I couldn't change anything. But I would also say that people need to go watch that movie called The Butterfly Effect.
Yeah, and I think that's the one with Ashton Kutcher, I believe. Was he involved?
Maybe, but it was kind of weird because you lost track a little bit, but the concept was amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that people need to watch that. They need to watch that movie
And
to realize I don't want to be somebody else.
yeah, you are the first person who has given the answer that I was looking for. Because a lot of people say, well, I would do this. I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, again, you wouldn't be where you are today because then you're
You wouldn't be.
altering,
Yeah,
you're altering your future, and it's already, you're here now. So again, if you go back
yeah,
and change anything that could alter something else, then you may not ever get back to where you are today.
exactly. And then as you're altering everything, because what we don't understand is that everything has to be altered then.
Hmm.
Like if I would have aborted my daughter at 30, 37 years ago, or if I would have given her up for adoption, all of those things would have changed. And I don't know if I would have had 5 more children,
Yeah.
after her. Everything would have changed. So yeah, I just think that people need to watch The Butterfly Effect. So when you do these these podcast interviews, mention that. Mention, what after go back and watch, The Butterfly Effect.
Absolutely. Like I said, I just I like to ask the question, and I was just waiting for one person to say nothing. No, I'm
Yeah.
trying to change anything. Not a
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, I love that. My last thing is, what misconceptions do people have about survivors? Things like sexual abuse and incest and things like that.
I would really say is that, because a lot of times people will say, why didn't you have it? Why didn't you tell somebody? Why didn't you do this? And we carry so much on our shoulders. And my abusers never said to me, if you do this, I'm going to tell this person this one. We already carried that in us. We knew when we were being sexually abused or sexually assaulted, we knew not to tell anybody. That was just something within us because some people were going to blame me. Some people were not going to understand. I was going to destroy families because my grandfather, was somebody that sexually abused me as a kid. If I was to tell, it was going to ruin my grandma's life. And I loved my grandma deeply. So I wasn't going to do something to ruin. And I think that sometimes people don't understand why we made the decisions we made in being safe and walking through the pain of it all. And I think that when you're a child, I I'm not necessarily, and I say this very cautiously, I'm not necessarily somebody that supports child counseling because that child still has to go back into that home. And so this child is talking about issues and things like that are happening in their home, but they still got to go back. I don't think that a lot of healing happens until you're out of the surroundings, until you're out of that. I remember going to counseling when we were 4, 5, 6 years old, and we would get into the car, and my mother would say, "So what'd you talk about? What'd you do?" So we would tell her, and then she'd go, "Why did you tell them that? Why would you? We didn't do it that way. That wasn't that way." So there's not a safety in counseling for children when they're young and they're going back into their homes. That's just my personal opinion. That is not, there's no data to prove it. There's no, papers to read about it. I just think that you don't start dealing with some of your pain until until you leave those situations. And have grace. Have grace for people that have been in these situations and have let their story be their story. Don't change their story by you creating something that wasn't there. And let us be safe in our own stories because there are stories.
And I totally agree with you. I've actually just recently told several people, because, kids do go through this type of trauma, and you can't expect them to, heal at any point if they're still in that situation. And I know for me as a child going through so much, I think that may be why I understand. I advocate so hard for young adults and children, because when they're in those types of situations, they can't heal. There's just no way. It's conflicting. There's no way to heal at all.
And there's no data to prove what we're saying, except for the data that I was part of that I know what happened in our home when we left the counseling session.
Yeah, and that's why I
My
always
mother
say,
didn't treat us any nicer after we left counseling. She treated us really great when we were in the building.
yeah. So that's why I say, a lot of our life experiences, those are real experiences. This is no textbook type thing. You can't get this stuff out of a textbook. You can only get this out of real life experiences. And
Absolutely.
that's something I truly try to stress to a lot of people, that yeah, if we live the textbook life, I'm not saying that it's bad, but it doesn't truly align with a lot of the things that we go through as real
Yes.
people.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We are real people. Okay, well, I do have one more question before we get off here. I know I try to keep my sessions at 30 to 45, but it never works. So,
That's okay. I always book them for an hour because you just know. And
yeah.
I'm a talker. So I already know.
So, my last question is, how has your relationship with God influenced your whole healing process?
I definitely believe that because he is the healer. And I think about the woman with the issue of blood. And for 12 years, that woman suffered. She suffered greatly. And in the Jewish culture, a woman was put away when they had issues of, menopause or menstrual cycles and things like that. And I imagine them, people taking money from her and she's put away for 12 years. And she found out that Jesus was coming into town. And she realized if she could just have one touch of him, if she could just get one touch from him, that she knew that she would be set free. And she took a bold statement in walking out of her house and going into the crowd, because she knew that she was treated like a leopard, that they scattered around, would scatter around her and get rid of her. But she just knew that if she could just have one touch of the hem of his garment, that something would transpire. So I think about that story, and I think about me and everything that I have been through, all the pain that I've experienced, and realizing if I could just have one touch of his garment, and how I could be set free. And when she finally got to touch Jesus and the hem of his garment, and it wasn't his whole garment, she didn't go up and try to grab all of him. All she grabbed was a piece of his garment. And he stops and he says, "Who touched me?" And this disciple said, "Well, Jesus, everybody's touching you." He goes, "No, somebody touched me." And he turned around and he saw a woman that had an issue of blood for 12 years and was abandoned and was forsaken and was turned back, and she was put aside. And he looked at her and he said, "Your faith has made you whole." And that woman, that day, that moment changed that woman's life. And I think about the things that I have been through and the stuff that I've been through in my life. And I've prayed many times, "God, all I need is just one touch from you. All I need is just one word from you. All I need is one billboard saying from you. All I need is one friend to call me with a word." And he does that for us. And so the healing power of Jesus. And if you go through scripture, and I'm writing a book right now It's being edited, called The God Who Sees. And they are stories of the women within the Bible that have experienced their touch from God, that they have experienced when God came in and he touched them in a way that transformed them. And when you think about different stories, and I think that sometimes as women, we just read the word of God and we don't get the passion of it. When you think of Mary, here we are celebrating the Christmas season. She had one touch from her heavenly Father by him saying, "You are honored above all women." But she still had to go through some stuff. We historians want to tell us that she was 13, 14, 15 years old. And during that time, she could have been stoned right in front of everybody, because now she's pregnant. So she has evidence that she's pregnant, and she could have been stoned at that time. But she experienced one touch from God, and that touch led her to freedom. That touch led her to be in places that she never would have been in, and that God covered her, and he blanketed her, through all of that. So I just tell people all the time, just pray for that one touch. Pray for that touch that is going to transform you, that is going to redeem you, that is going to set you free. And then when you experience that touch, you realize that you are always in the arms of Jesus, and that he is always going before you. He has already directed the path. He knows the beginning from the end. He knows what mountains you're going to have to climb. He knows the roller coaster life that you're going to have. But he said, remember always that touch, the touch of his garment. And that's what I know that I know that I know. I can't prove scripture to you like my sons can. My sons can prove scripture through math, through science, through geology, through everything. I can prove that Jesus is real because I once was lost and now I'm found. I once was blind, but now I see. I have touched the hem of his garment and I have been made whole. And that's how I know that Jesus has come into my life and he has transformed me.
I love the way you put that in part. I love the way you put that. And I am truly ready for this third book of yours. I cannot wait. I'm definitely going to have to keep up with you. I definitely would love to speak with you again. Of course, I am following you.
Absolutely.
I am on your blogs reading. Um, uh, I really enjoyed the site. I believe I was on there really late last night. I want to say about 2 o'clock this morning.
That's awesome. Well, just make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe, to my blog, because then you'll get extra things sent to you, when you subscribe. So just make sure that your readers, and your audience, to go to healingthroughstories.com. It's all one word. Subscribe and you will get a weekly blog. And if there's anybody, even if you want to share your story and you want to share something to encourage others, please, just send it to my email address and I will put it on as the next blog that comes on my, on my website. So please, if you have anybody in your audience, that has a story that they want to tell, that want to encourage, want to set people free, or you just want to share your story so you know that you're not the only one, please do that. But yes, absolutely go to healingthroughstories.com. Both of my books are on there, that you could purchase my books through my website. I have one, The Journey of Josephine, which is my memoir, and then The Treasures of My Heart. So please go on there and subscribe, and let's heal together. Definitely. Let's come to the table and let's heal together.
Like I said, I'm going to keep up with you. And I, again, hope to be talking with you pretty soon in the near future, not too far away, because I love your energy and you're just an amazing soul. And I'm so thrilled that I did get to talk to you and hear from you, specifically versus reading the blog. So yes, I love the fact that you were able to share your story with everyone. And I do know for sure that I have so many women who need to hear your story, because a lot of times
well, thank you. And if you know anybody that is,
yeah,
and if you know anybody that's looking for a speaker, a motivational speaker, in your area that, you're running an event or something like that, please, reach out to me. That's the next step to my, to being a woman of influence in people's lives. That's my next step this next year, is being able to go around our country and to be able to share healing through stories, because that's what sets us free. So if you know anybody at all that is looking for a guest speaker, please, reach out to me and let me know.
I definitely will, and I'm ready for 2025. There's
Me too.
so many great things are coming. I know, and I've heard, and I just can't wait to, I have a whole list of books that I'm ready to, dive into it whenever they're released, of course. So
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Well, you can purchase mine. You can purchase The Journey of Josephine right on my website. So that could be your first story that you read.
All right, I will be doing that.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for stopping by and sharing your story. And I am really excited for my listeners to hear what you had to say.
Thank you so much. God bless you guys, and Merry Christmas.
Same as you, and to your family as well. Alrighty, have a good one. Thank you.